We all know those classic Bible stories, right? Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, David and Goliath. But have you ever thought about the Bible as a songbook?
A songbook.
Yeah, like filled with, well, actual songs and poetry.
Oh, you mean psalm.
Exactly, Psalms. It's 150 prayers and poems, and we're going to really dig into it.
Sounds fascinating.
And we have an amazing guide to help us along the way. It's called Bible Explained, a secular analysis of Psalms.
Ah, a secular lens. Always interesting.
Now, what's so different about Psalms, compared to other parts of the Bible?
Well, a lot of the Bible is stories, laws, or, teachings, but Psalms, it's pure emotion, raw, unfiltered human
Like
experience.
someone just poured their heart out no matter what they were feeling.
Right, and that's what's so powerful about it. Joy, despair, gratitude, anger, even vengeance, it's all there.
And that's kind of wild, right? I mean, these are texts that are thousands of years old, and yet those emotions still resonate with us today.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It really is. It makes you wonder, has human nature really changed that much? Like you, listening right now, think about a time you felt completely lost, betrayed, or like on top of the world with joy.
Yeah, think about it.
Do any of those feelings sound familiar? Because
Yeah.
chances are there's a psalm that captures that same emotion.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things that keeps people coming back to Psalms century after century, but it also creates some, well, challenges.
Challenges. How so?
We'll take Psalm 109, for example. It's basically calling down curses on the writer's enemies.
Whoa, intense.
Right. Now, in the context of ancient tribal warfare, where it was literally us versus them, that might have made more
Mhm.
sense. But how does that sit with us today?
That's a good question. How does that fit in with our modern understanding of, forgiveness or loving your enemies?
Exactly. It can make you question a lot of things,
Mhm.
especially the traditional idea of a loving and merciful God.
Yeah, definitely food for thought. You mentioned something earlier that really stuck with me. You called Psalms human, all too human. What did you mean by that?
Well, for starters, the book wasn't written by just one person, like many people think. It wasn't all King David, sitting down with his harp.
So it's not just one voice.
Not at all. Imagine like different poets and musicians, each with their own unique experiences, adding to this collection over, hundreds of
Yeah.
years.
That really changes things, doesn't it? So it's not just one perspective, but a whole bunch of them, like a chorus spanning generations.
Precisely. And you see this kind of compilation all the time in ancient texts. And it raises an interesting question.
What was that?
How did people back then view these writings as sacred if they knew they were always changing and evolving?
Right. Makes you think, doesn't it? And speaking of changing views, these ancient voices weren't always, well, scientifically accurate by today's standards.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, Psalms describes the earth as flat, the heavens as this solid dome. We know those aren't true.
Definitely not. But it's important to remember that these texts were written with a completely different worldview, a very different understanding of the universe.
It's like looking at a painting from, a different era. You can appreciate its beauty, but you also understand it reflects the techniques and styles of its time.
Absolutely. A perfect analogy.
And this all brings us to how psalms are used in worship today.
Okay, how so?
Well, we often see people focusing on the more comforting, uplifting verses, the ones about hope and God's love. But the more difficult passages, the ones with anger and vengeance, we kind of tiptoe around them.
It's selective interpretation, isn't it? We pick and choose the parts that fit our modern sensibilities, our current worldview.
Exactly. It raises questions about how we engage with these ancient religious texts. Can we appreciate both the beautiful parts and the challenging parts?
I think we have to. That's where secular analysis comes in. It's not about throwing out faith or belief, it's about context. It's about thinking critically about these texts and where they come from.
So we've covered a lot of ground. We've touched on the raw emotion of Psalms, the mystery surrounding its authorship, the impact of historical context, and the challenges of interpreting it for modern readers. It's a lot to think about.
It really is.
So knowing all this, the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the complex, how can you, as a listener, appreciate those amazing poems and prayers while also acknowledging where they come from and the contradictions they might hold?
Can those two perspectives coexist? That's the real question.
That's the one we all have to wrestle with.